Hey coders, welcome back to Coding Hub, and in this video we'll be creating this cool looking application where we are basically having multiple cards and this card is completely scrollable. After this, in each of this card, we are basically having this episode button, a Netflix icon button, a watch again button. With this we are also having an image towards the right side. Now after that we are basically having this two text which are a title text and a description text, and then we are basically having this card which is of color black, right? So we'll be learning how to create this cool looking UI using the things which we have covered till now, which is basically text composable, button composable, and in this video we'll be covering card composable and we'll be trying to implement this cool looking application. So let us code. Okay, so what I have done is I have basically created a new empty activity compose project. After this, I will be basically removing this to composable. I'll be also removing this greeting composable from here. Now what I have done is that I have basically taken a screenshot of the card and I have dragged it into Paint so we can understand the structure. Now we'll be also keeping a note over here. Okay, so the first thing was that we were basically having multiple cards, right? So one card after another card, but we will be looking into that later. Let us focus into just a single card. Okay, so if we look clearly, we'll be finding out that we are basically having a card. Firstly, this is our card, let us suppose, and in this card, this card basically, so we can directly say that we are having a card at start, right? And then we can say what we are basically having in this card. Now what I can do is I can split this card content into two parts. So let us suppose we say the first part, the first part is basically from this part, we can say. So we can say this is our first part, which is basically having this image, this two buttons, and this episode 1 button. And then we can have another part which will be basically this one, which is basically having this text. Now if we look into these two elements, we can find out that they are basically represented in a vertical fashion, right? So we can easily say that we can store them in column, right? So after this, what we will be requiring is that let us see each of these elements. Now of this column, the first element which we can see is that we can separate these two things. Okay, so let us separate this 3 button and this image separately. Okay, so what we can do is we can simply say these 3 buttons are inside one block and this image is in the other block, right? Now if we see these two blocks, they are basically aligned horizontally, so we can directly say that we can store them in a row, right? And in this row, let us see what we'll be having as our as our first element. So if we look clearly, we can see that we can split this one also. So we can say, let us suppose this episode 1 button is in this box, and then we can have another box which is basically having this two, right? And if we look into this, we can clearly understand that they are again in a vertical fashion. So we can easily say that they will be in a column, right? And in this column, we can simply say that we'll be having this button, which is basically the episode button, right? And after this, let us split these two buttons also. So we can easily, we can easily say that these two buttons are basically, we can say that they are also in a row fashion, right? Because they are arranged one after another in a horizontal fashion, right? So like this. So what we can say is that in this episode button, after this episode button, the next thing will be basically a row, and in this row we'll be having these two buttons which were basically the Netflix button, we can say Netflix button, and then we can also have another button which is basically the watch again button, right? Okay, perfect. Now let us see what is remaining. So in this row, the second element which we were having was basically in this row, the second element which we were having was the image. So let us also align that one over here. So we can say image, right? And then in this column, the first element was a row, right? So in the whole whole thing. So the first element which we have, covered, which was basically the row. And the next element, we can easily see that they are arranged one after another in a vertical fashion, right? So we can say that this two text can be stored inside a column. So let us focus on this. So we can simply say it will be basically a column, and in this column we'll be basically having two texts. The first text will be a heading, and the next text will be, we can say it will be basically a description. Okay, so this is the structure which we will be basically having. And then we can say that there are multiple cards, so we consider this card as a parent. So if we want multiple cards in a vertical fashion, we can keep all of these cards in a column, right? So let us code right now. Okay, so the first thing which we will be basically doing is that we'll be creating we can say a simple column. Okay, so we can simply say column, and in this column we can basically specify a modifier. The modifier will basically help us with few things which we are currently wanting. So we can say modifier dot, we can say that take the maximum size, so we can say fill max size. Then we can give a padding, a padding of maybe 5 dp. With this will be also add the vertical scroll effect, because we are basically wanting that scroll effect, right? So we can simply say remember scroll state. So we can say that remember we can say scroll state, right? And it will basically remember the scroll state. Now we can add this dp, so we have to import this. Now we are ready with our column. Okay, we can also do few more things, like we can have the vertical arrangement, and we can say arrangement dot spaced. We can have basically spaced around or spaced evenly as per your requirement. We'll be using the space around for now. Let us bring them down so the readability can be increased. Okay, so we are now having this things, and let us create, let us start by creating our, the first thing, which will be basically creating a function. So let us create a function, and let us say it is basically a composable function, and we can simply say fun my card. Okay, so let us say that, and inside this what we will be doing is that we'll be calling this my card from here. So we can simply say my card, and inside this we'll be basically creating our card. Okay, so when we look into the things, right, we find out that the first thing which we require is a card. So let us create that card. Okay, so we can simply say card, and in this card we'll be basically using few of the things, like we'll be using a modifier, and we'll be defining shape and all of that. So we can have a circular bracket come down, and let us say we say modifier equals modifier, and in this modifier we'll be basically giving it the maximum width, we can say, and with this we'll be specifying a height to each of this card. So we can simply say something like, we can say 300 dp. I am randomly taking it, it is completely upon you. Now padding, I can give it 5 dp, let us suppose. Let us bring this down, so the readability can be increased. Now after this, what we can have, we can basically have this comma. Now in this, the thing which we have created, if we look into this card, right, so this card was basically having that rounded corners, right? So let us do that. So for this, we can simply do is, we can simply say shape equals, we can simply say something like rounded corner shape, and in this shape we can, let us say the corner is of 15.dp. Okay, now after this shape, let us specify the color of this card, because it was basically having that blackish color, right? So which we have seen, so it was basically having that blackish tint color. Let us do that. So we can simply say color, or we can simply say card default, so we can say card default dot, we can simply say card color, and in this card color let us pass the container color, and the container color will be basically color, and I am having this hex code, so it is basically 0xff, and the code will be basically 092635. Okay, and let us see what it is saying. So it is saying import it. Let us import this. We'll be importing this one, and we are having this. Okay. Now let us run this code, and let us see whether we are able to see the card. Okay. So it will take some time for the Gradle build to finish. Till that time, let us see what we'll be creating in the card. Okay, so in this card, we can see that we require a column, right? And this column will be having two elements, which is our row, and then we'll be having another column, right? So let us do that. So we have to create a column, and then inside this column, we'll be creating a row and a column. Okay, so let us do that part. So now it is installed, and okay, so now we can see this card, right? And it is looking exactly the same card which we have seen in the preview, right? So let us focus on the next thing. Till now, what I will be doing is, let us split this into a window, minimize this. Okay, now in this, in this card, what we were basically requiring, a column, right? So we were basically requiring a column. Now the thing is that because this card scope is by default having a column, we can directly write this row code and then we can write this column. Okay, because we can see this is a column scope, right? So we can directly specify the row and then we can directly specify the column. Okay, so let us specify the row, and in this row we'll be basically using few of the things, and it is basically that we'll be requiring a modifier. We can simply say modifier, equals modifier, and in this modifier, what we'll be doing is we'll be specifying the height of the card, or we can say, the first thing which was basically having the three buttons on the image, we can say 200.dp. And after this, what we can do is we can also have the remaining things, like we can say take the maximum width, with this. Okay, now let us bring this down to increase the readability. It is just upon you whether you want to do it or not. Now in this, in this row, we were basically, having different things. But for now, let us not focus on this row and let us focus on the text part, okay, which was basically having inside a column. So let us do that. So we can simply say column, and we are basically talking about this column, okay, over here, this column, which is basically having this two text, okay. So in this column, what we can do is we can simply say vertical arrangement, and we can say arrangement dot center. And after this, inside this column, let us have a text, which will be basically my heading text, right? So we can have a text, any text. Let us suppose, this is a demo. We can say demo heading, right? So we can say this is a demo heading. And in this, we can have multiple different things, like we can specify color. So we can simply say comma, enter. And let us say color, and in this color we can simply say color dot white. So I want the text color to be white. Then we can simply say text align. I want to align the text in the start towards the start. So we can say text align dot start, and we can do all of these things. Now you will be knowing about these things because I have covered, the entire text composable in a or we can say in a separate video. So you can look into that part, or you can look into that video if you don't know much about this, text composable. I have discussed all the basics. Now we can simply say modifier dot, padding. So let us give a padding, and the padding which I will be providing is basically toward the start, and we can say start equals, let us give it a padding of maybe 15.dp. Okay, and then what we can do is let us say font size, so we have to have a comma over here. Then we can say font size. Let us specify the font size. I will be saying it will be 24.sp. We have to import this sp. Okay. After this, we can simply say font weight. Then we can say font weight dot bold. Okay. And after this, we can also give it a letter spacing, and the letter spacing will be of 0.1 m unit. We have to also import this one. Okay. So, let us come down. We'll be requiring a comma over here, so we have to come down. Okay, now we can simply say font family. Let us use a custom font family which is by default provided, like sans serif. Okay, so we can use the sans serif. Okay, so we are done with this, and let us see whether we are able to see this text. Okay, so let us rerun, apply the changes. Okay, so it has been launched into our device. Let us see. Yeah, so we are able to see this text, which is, this is a demo heading, right? Okay, now let us create the next text, which was basically, the text which is basically having the description, right? So let us do that. Okay, so we can simply say text, and in this text, let us say, we can say, it is a demo, a demo description, something like that. Okay, and after this, what we can do is we can have a comma, come down. So we can have a comma and then we can come down. Let us specify the color. The color will be again white. So we are specifying the color, which will be again the white color. Then we can say text align. Let us make the text align to start. We can simply say text dot align start. Now after this, we'll be basically having the modifier for the padding. So we can simply say modifier dot padding, and we can simply say start, and let us give it a padding of 15 dp, and then towards the end we can also say 15.dp. okay, we can do the same thing over here also if we want to. So we can even say end equals 15 dp, so it looks much better in perspective of design. It is completely upon you, upon your preference. Then we can have a text overflow condition, and this is something which I am providing because let us suppose the description is too long, then we don't want the text to be overlapped, right? So it'll be basically overflowing the condition, which will basically give a dot at the end if the entire text cannot be shown. Okay, so we can simply say ellipsis. Now after this, we can simply say font size, and let us give it a font size of 12.sp. And after this, what we can do is we can simply say font weight, and let us give a font weight of maybe normal. So we can simply say font weight, dot normal. And after this, we can simply have a font family, and we can use the font family sans serif, which is by default provided. After this, we can simply say the line height. Let us specify the line height to be 15.sp. Okay, and let us rerun this. Let us see whether we can see that description. Okay, so let us come over here. Yeah, so we can see this text, right? It is a demo description. Perfect. Now the main thing which we have to do is that let us focus on this row. Okay, let us try to code this one. Okay, so in this row, what we can do is we can basically have few of the things. Okay, so in this row, what we'll be doing is that we'll be basically saying, in this card, if we come over here, we are basically having few of the things like modifier, all of this. Okay, now let us focus on this row. So in this row, we can simply say we will be requiring a column, and this column, we have discussed it earlier, right? So we have discussed it earlier that we'll be requiring this column, and inside this we'll be basically creating this episode button, right? And then we'll be creating this row, which will be basically having this 2 buttons. Okay, and with this column, we'll be also having a image, right? So let us create this column first. So in this column, we can simply specify few of the things, like we can say modifier equals modifier. Okay, and in this modifier, we can simply say that we'll be giving few of the things like the height. And okay, so this is basically the column, so we'll be not requiring the height. We can simply specify the width only, and let us suppose the width which I want to provide over here is of 230 dp, and then we can basically have the fill max height. Okay, so we'll be giving it the entire height. After this, we will be creating the things. Okay, with this, we have to also specify one more thing below this column, which will be basically our image, right? So let us try to put that image. Now before this image, we will be requiring to bring that images in drawable. So what I will be doing is I will be simply coming over here, copying this images. So you can select all of these images, copy them. Now I will be providing this images in the description section. You can click on the link and you can download all of these images resources if you want. Now let us come to this Netflix demo, and then we can come to this drawable and just click Ctrl V. Okay, and it will basically basically paste all these images in this drawable. Okay, so let us do that. After this, what we can do is, after this we can simply come after this column, and we can simply say image, and we can simply say painter resource, let us say r.drawable dot, and we can say simply that we want this image res1. Okay, so we can have this image as our first image. Let us provide a description. I will keep it as an empty description. Okay, now we can also specify a few more things, like we can specify the alignment on all of this. Let us do that. Okay, so we can say alignment, and in this alignment we can simply say alignment dot center end, because we want the image to be centered and towards the end side. Then we can have this modifier, and I will be using this modifier to give it a max height. So we can simply say modifier dot fill max height. With this, we'll be also providing the content scale, which will be basically content scale dot fit. And let us see run this. Okay, let us see whether we are able to see that image. So we have to retry this. Okay, so it is installed successfully, and see, now we are able to see this image, right? Now we are slowly getting to that point, right? Now we are having this image. Now the remaining things are this 3 buttons. Let us create this 3 buttons. Okay, so let us do that. Okay, so the thing will be that we'll be requiring this 3 buttons, and these buttons were currently stored in this column. Okay, so if we see this column, right, if we see this column was having this episode button, right? So let us create this episode button, and then we can create this row, and then we will be basically creating the remaining 2 buttons. Okay, so let us create this episode button. So we can come over here, and then we can simply we can say that we will be basically requiring a button. Okay, so let us say we'll be basically requiring a button, and in this button there will be a thing, right? So what we can do is, we can have this, we can have a comma, come down. So we are not specifying the on-click function now, but you can specify it if you want. Okay, so now we'll be having a shape. Now this shape, I will be having this rounded corner shape. Now I have shown you how to create this button earlier, also in our previous video, where we have created like 10-20 buttons. So you can navigate to that video if you haven't covered that. I will be suggesting you to cover that, because it will clear all of your doubts regarding creating buttons. Okay, so I will be saying top start, and I am doing it because we don't want the roundness all around, but we want the roundness to be in a specific place. So it will be in the top start, and then we can say bottom end. Okay, so it will be basically 8 dp, and for the remaining things we can simply say top end, and let us give it of 2 dp, and then bottom start, we can give it also 2 dp. Okay, now what we'll be doing next is that let us provide an elevation to this button. So we can say elevation, we can say button default dot, so we can even come after this, and we can simply say button elevation. Okay, let us bring this down. Okay, now over here we can simply say default elevation, and let us override the value to be 5 dp. Okay, now we can simply say modifier, and we'll be basically specifying the height of this button. So we can say 35.dp, and after this what we'll be doing is, we'll be basically specifying the color of this button. So we can simply say button default dot, or we can say button defaults dot button color, and in this we can simply say container color, and in this we can specify the color. So I am already having the color, I will be specifying it. It is 0xFF86, okay, 5DFF. Okay, so this is our color code. Now after this, what we'll be doing is, we'll be basically providing the text which we want to show over this button. Okay, so we can come down, and let us say we say text, and the text which I want to show is, it will be basically something like episode 1, right? This is the text which we were wanting to show, right? Okay, so I can have a comma over here, come down, and let us say we want a font size of maybe 13.sp, and then we can basically have a font weight, and then we can simply say font weight dot bold. Okay, and then we can basically say a letter spacing. Let us take a letter spacing of 0.1 unit. Okay, so we are done with this also. So now we are basically having this text, right? And let us try to rerun this code. Okay, reinstall and restart the application. Okay, so let us come over here and see. Now we are having this episode 1 button, right? Now the remaining thing is that we have to create the remaining 2 buttons. Now if we come after this, we can create that 2 remaining buttons. Now if we come over here, which the structure which we have created earlier, we can see that we'll be requiring a row, and inside this row we'll be keeping this 2 buttons, right? And we'll be also requiring a spacer because we want to give a space between the episode button and this. So we can also say that we'll be basically requiring a spacer. Okay, so let us provide a spacer after this. Okay, so for this what we can do is, let us say we'll be basically requiring a spacer, right? So let us do that. Okay, so what we can do is, we can simply come over here, we can say spacer, and then we can simply give it a height. So we can say modifier dot height. So this spacer will occupy some height, maybe 15.tp. Okay, that is enough. Okay, now let us create the row, and in this row we have to specify few things like vertical alignment. Let us say alignment dot center vertically. Okay, and after this, in this, we can also have this 2 buttons, right? So the first thing was that we will be requiring a icon button, and then we'll be basically requiring the another button, right? Now the main thing over here is that we'll be basically requiring a space toward the left side. So we can again create a spacer. It is completely upon you. You can create a spacer, or you can give a padding toward the left side. Okay, it is completely upon you. I prefer giving a spacer, so we can say width, and let us say I want this spacer to take 10 10.dp width. Okay, now we can simply say icon button, and after this icon button we'll be basically requiring few of the things. Okay, so we can simply say modifier. So we'll be specifying the size, and let us give it a size of 30dp maybe. Okay, let us bring this down. Let us bring this down also. Okay, bring this down. Okay, now after this we can have a comma, and after this modifier what we can do is, we can basically have this image. Okay, so over here we can basically have this image. Now I'll be requiring that image, so I can come over here. Let me copy this image which we were basically having. Okay, so this is the Netflix icon which we were wanting, and after this what we can do is, we can come over to this Netflix demo, come over to this drawable, paste this. I'll be also linking this image in the in the description. You can download it from there. Now we can simply say painter. Okay, so we can simply come over here and we can simply say painter resource, and then we can simply say r dot drawable dot, we can simply say Netflix icon. Okay, so we are having that Netflix icon. Now let us give a content description. I will keep it empty. Now the next thing which we'll be basically requiring is that we'll be requiring few of the things like we can have a content scale, all of that. Okay, so let us bring this down, and what we can do is, after this we can have a comma, come down, and let us specify the remaining things, right? So we can simply say modifier equals modifier, and we can simply say dot fill max size. So I want the image to fill the entire size, and then we can basically have a content scale, and this content scale I can keep it content scale dot crop. Okay, so it will fill the entire space. Okay, so we can simply say content scale. Okay, so it will be basically content scale equals capital C, and I can simply say crop. Okay, so let us rerun this and let us see whether we can see that a Netflix icon button. Okay, so it is saying retry. Let us retry. Okay, now we should be able to see this. See, now we can see this Netflix button, right? And there is only one button which is remaining, which is basically the watch again button. So let us create that also. So after this, we can also have a spacer, so both the buttons are not, aligned together. So we can simply say, let us give a spacer maybe. Okay, so we can come down and then we can say spacer. Let us give it a width, and let us give it a width of maybe 8.tp. Okay, now after this we can basically create that button also. So we can simply say button. Okay, so we can simply say button, and in this button we'll be basically having this have a comma, come down, have a comma, come down. Okay, and then we can basically say the color. Now the color which we can do is we can simply say button default button color. Let us specify the content color and container color. So container color was red, so we can simply say color dot red, and the content color will be white. Okay, so we can say color dot white. So in this container color, it is basically the color which will be provided to the button. So button color will be red, while the content is basically the text which is will be providing in this button. So its color will be basically white. Okay, now we can have this text. We can simply come down and let us say we say button text, or we can give a text like watch again. Okay, something like that. And after this text, what we can do is we can also provide the remaining things like the font weight and all of that. So we can have a comma, come down. Let us specify the font weight. So we can simply say font weight dot, we can say extra bold, and then we can basically specify the size. We can say something like 15.sp, and let us come down and let us say letter spacing, and we can say 0.m unit. This is the letter spacing which we are wanting. And then let's specify the font family. I will be also giving it sans serif dot sans serif. Okay, so let us try to rerun this. So let us reinstall and restart the application. Okay, now let us see the application. See, now we are having this button, and this is the same thing which we decided, right? So this is the same thing which we wanted to create. Now the main thing is that we will be wanting multiple cards of like this, right? So what we can do is we can come over here and let us copy this my card. Let us copy this my card, come over here, paste this 2-3 times, like 5 times we can do it. Let us rerun this, right? And now if we come to this, now see, it is completely scrollable. But the thing is that we were having separate image for each of this card, we were having separate text for each of this. So what we can do is we can basically pass the values over here, and then we can receive that values over there, and accordingly we can decide or we can say simply replace the values. Okay, so let us do that. What we can do is we can come to this my card, and let us suppose we basically have a button text which will be basically the text which will be basically keeping in the button. So we can simply say button text. So this is the same text which will be shown on the red button. Okay, like the watch now or play now, something like that. Okay, so we can simply say watch button text. Okay, so we can say that. It is completely upon you how you want to rename this variables. Now it will be basically a string, then we'll be basically having an image, right? So we can have that also, but we can also have the remaining things, like we can have the text for the top button. So we can say top button text, and let us say it is also a string, and then we can also have the image, so we can say drawable ID, and then we can say it is basically a int, and then we can also have like the episode title, it will be also a string, and then we can basically have string, and then we can basically have the episode, we can say description, right? So we can say episode description, and it will be also a string. Okay, now it has to be episode. Let us make it episode. Okay, so we have to remove this one, then we can say episode description. Sure, it will be TION. Okay, now what we can do is we can pass this values. Before that, we have to make sure that we use this text in the below things. Okay, so the first thing was this watch button text, right? So let us do that, where we were basically having this. So instead of this episode 1, we can directly replace it with this top button text, right? So because it was the top button, so you can simply say top button text. We have done that. Now there are few more things like this button, we have done this. Let us focus on the remaining buttons. Like this icon button, it was basically having the Netflix, and we can remove this by simply saying drawable ID. So it will basically have that thing. Okay, no, it was basically for the Netflix button. We will leave it as it is, and it was basically the watch again, right? So we can simply remove this, and we can keep the first one, which was basically this one, this watch button text, right? So this is the watch button text, so we can simply say watch button text, and then we are having this image, so we can replace this with the painter ID, or we can say drawable ID, and then we were having this two text, which is basically the heading text and the description text. So we can simply say it was let us see what the name was. The name was episode title, episode description, right? So let us use that. So we can come down over here to this text, so below this, and it was basically episode title, and it will be episode description. Okay, so we can say episode description. Okay, now let us provide the title, description, and all of this. We can come over here and let us try to provide it. So we can simply say something like so the first thing will be basically watch again. Let us say for the for that red button. Then what we can do is we can have this, which is basically asking us the top button text. We can simply say episode 1 for the first one, episode 1. Then it is basically asking for the drawable, so we can simply say dot drawable dot, we can say image res1, and then we can have the remaining things like the episode title, so we can simply say red light comma green light. Okay, so it will basically green light. Right, after this, what we will be basically having is we'll be having another comma over here, and then we can basically specify the the description of this episode. So we can directly say player, so we can simply say player players face deadly consequences in a children's game turned deadly. Okay, so this is few of the text which I have by default generated. Now what we can do is we can have a dot over here. Now let us copy this one. Okay, let us copy this one only. So let us copy this one, this entire thing, and let us replace this once. Okay, so what we can do is we can make it more readable by bringing this down. Let us bring them down, something like that. Now it is much more readable than what it was previously. Let us copy this again and let us create cards like this, like one more card, then we can create one more card, and let us create one more card. Okay, and let us change this images so we can have this 2, let us make this 3, let us make this 4, and let us make this 5, because we are having this 5 images, right? So it will be episode 5, let us make it episode 4, let us make it episode 3, let us make it episode 2, let us make it episode 1. So it is by default 5. Okay, now we can say play now over here. Let us say the user has only watched the first episode, so we want the others to have this play now, right? So we can basically copy this for the remaining ones. So we can replace this with play now, replace this with play now again, and replace this with play now again also. Okay, now let us reapply the changes and let us reinstall and restart the app. Okay, now if we come over here, see, now we can see this watch again, play now, and we can also see this images changing. And now we are having this red light, green light for each of this card. Now you can simply do that by yourself. You can basically assign this this red light, green light. You can change this for the episode 2. You can also say that you want the something like the front man's invitation. Okay, so it can be heading again. Then you can have another heading for this, like tug of war, so it is something which you can do by yourself. I'll be providing you the episode title description in the description box. If you want to copy that, you can also do that. Okay, if you want to create the similar thing. See, now we are having that text, right? So we are having red light, green light for this, the frontman invitation for this, and then we are having this red light, green light. Okay, so you can do the remaining thing like this by yourself. Okay, so now we have basically created the application which we have seen in the starting, and in our upcoming videos we'll be discussing more things, like we'll be discussing the other Jetpack components like cards, then there are chips and all of that. So we'll be trying to cover all of this, and after covering few of the topics, we'll be trying to create something like this, so we can have a brief understanding about all the topics. So till now, what you have to do, you have to simply subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon, share this video with your lovely ones or your friends who are currently struggling with Android development. Till then, have a great coding journey. This is Coding Hub signing off for this video, and we'll be meeting soon.